Was this unbudgeted costs, or was this something the department planned for in advance, since you were appropriated $1 trillion last year?
The department deals with contingency operations all the time within its normal budget.
So this was not budgeted for. You can't provide us with a basic answer to the most simple question that you should be able to answer to each and every American
You're
taxpayer.
asking a question to an answer with an answer you already have.
No, I'm asking you for a breakdown where...
Pete Hegseth has said it under oath, more than once. Every American taxpayer dollar that comes to the Department of Defense, he will be accountable for where it goes and why. Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander of New Hampshire held him to that promise yesterday. She asked for a breakdown of the $25 billion already spent in the Iran war. Where did it go? What specifically was purchased? Basic accounting. The kind any department head of any organization should be able to provide. Hegseth couldn't give it. Then Goodlander asked him something simpler. What did a gallon of gas cost the average American on February 28th, before this war started? Hegseth said it depends on where you live. If you live in California, $8. The national average was $2.83. She asked what it costs today. He said much higher in California. The national average is $4.23. The Secretary of Defense, the man who promised to be accountable for every taxpayer dollar, doesn't know what gas costs, doesn't know where $25 billion went, and runs an agency that has now failed 8 consecutive audits. I'm Cole. This is Court in Committee. The accountability he promised and the accountability he delivered are two completely different things. Let's go through exactly what that gap cost you.
Ms. Goodlander.
I want to thank our witnesses for being here today, and I want to begin by getting right to it, since my time is limited, on this $1.5 trillion budget request. Mr. Hegseth, you testified last year and you testified again today that you will be accountable for every American taxpayer dollar that comes to the department, where it goes and why. That's really important, since, as it's been pointed out, the department has failed 8 audits. The department remains on GAO's high-risk list. The Inspector General just last year alone identified billions of dollars that could have been put to better use, and in questioned costs, that is spending that raised red flags. So this is a crisis right now in accountability of where the dollars of the American taxpayers, who are in the middle of a cost crisis, where this money is going. I want to ask about your war in Iran. And Mr. Hurst, you testified earlier today that $25 billion has been spent to date. I just want to clarify that that is money, that taxpayer dollars that have been spent already in this war.
$25 reflects the costs of the war, right? So we've already spent the dollars on munitions and things like that. So we're factoring in cost of munitions expended into that total.
So how much of that has gone towards munitions? Does that include the munitions that have been spent to date?
Yeah, that reflects the munitions that have been spent to date and other operational costs.
Can you give us a breakdown of what those costs are?
We'll work to get you guys a product that has a detailed breakdown of those costs.
Yeah, my concern here is, Mr. Hegseth, you've testified repeatedly that you're going to be accountable for each and every American taxpayer dollar that you spend, that you're going to be accountable for the rationale. Here we are 60 days in to your war of choice in Iran, and you can't give us an answer on a breakdown of the basic breakdown of American taxpayer dollars that have been spent in your war of choice? That's a question for Mr. Hurst. Right now, as you sit here now, you
We're
cannot...
happy to give you a breakdown. We'll provide you a product after this hearing.
Well, I would love for you to give us this breakdown now and explain to us, was this unbudgeted costs, or was this something the department planned for in advance, since you were appropriated $1 trillion last year?
The department deals with contingency operations all the time within its normal budget.
So this was not budgeted for. My point here is, you know, and General Kane, you've testified to this. We all understand, for you to do your jobs, you need Congress to pass budgets. For us to do our jobs, we need you to give us the details and to be accountable to American taxpayers. And so I got to say, it's an extraordinary dereliction that as you sit here, you cannot account for billions of dollars that have already been spent.
You're
in this
briefed
war.
on munitions every week. You and your entire staff have every,
asking
just so the
you-
American public know, it's not
Mr.
as if you
Hegseth,
don't have munitions levels.
Mr.
You do
Hegseth,
from us every single week. So
Mr.
you know
Hegseth,
exactly the numbers you're
Mr.
talking
Hegseth,
about.
you have testified that American taxpayers need to know where their dollars are going. And as you sit here today, you can't provide us with a basic answer to the most simple question that you should be able to answer to each and every American
You're asking
taxpayer.
a question to an answer with an answer you already have.
No, I'm asking you for a breakdown where you said you will be accountable for every taxpayer dollar. You cannot tell us where any of the $25 billion in taxpayer funds that have gone to fund your war of choice in Iran. And I look forward to getting details from our witnesses after this hearing, because the American taxpayers need to know. Mr. Hegseth, can I ask you, do you know what the average cost of a gallon of gas was in this country on February 28th?
Well, it depends on where you live. If you live in California, it's $8.
$2.83. Do you know what the average cost of a gallon of gas is today?
Much higher in California.
$4.23. I gotta say, Mr. Hegseth, you said you've got a crack economic team that's looking at the impacts of this war on the American taxpayer, and you can't answer this basic question. That should shock the conscience of every American. General Kane, I want to come back to something, a really important principle, and my time is limited. You testified to an important and bedrock principle of American law, that our service members follow lawful orders and lawful orders only. Is that right? Do you agree with the statement, quote, "The military won't follow unlawful orders"?
I do.
Mr. Hegseth, do you agree with that statement?
I do, but understand what you're insinuating at a partisan point.
I'm not. I'm actually quoting you directly, Mr. Hegseth, from April 12th, 2016. And I appreciate that on the record, you've clarified this important principle of American
Gentlelady's
law.
time's expired. Chair,
I want to start with the promise, because without it, this is just another hearing where a cabinet secretary dodges questions. With it, it's something else entirely. Hegseth did not stumble into an accountability standard. He chose one, repeatedly, under oath. In confirmation hearings, and in this very hearing room, he said the words, "I will be accountable for every American taxpayer dollar that comes to this department, where it goes and why." That is not a paraphrase. That is his testimony. He built his entire public posture as Defense Secretary around the idea that unlike his predecessors, the ones who presided over 8 consecutive failed audits, the ones who left billions in questioned costs flagged by the Inspector General, the ones who kept the Pentagon on the GAO's high-risk list year after year, he was going to be different. That promise is now load-bearing, and yesterday it collapsed in real time. Goodlander asked for a breakdown of $25 billion. Not an audit, not a classified intelligence assessment, a breakdown. Line items, where the money went, what it bought. The kind of accounting document that exists in every functioning financial system, and that the Pentagon generates internally every single week, as General Keane confirmed in that same hearing. The munitions levels, the operational costs, the expenditure reports. Hegseth's own department sends Congress updates on munitions every week. He said he'd get her a product after the hearing. Sit with what that means. The Secretary of Defense, in an oversight hearing about an active war, with $25 billion already spent, could not produce a basic cost breakdown for a department that tracks this spending in real time. The document exists. His staff has it. He chose not to have it at the table. That is not incompetence. That is insulation with a paper trail. And here is the frame underneath that decision. The Pentagon has failed 8 consecutive audits. 8. The Department of Defense is the only major federal agency that has never passed a full financial audit, not once since the legal requirement was established in 1990. The GAO has kept it on the high-risk list continuously. The Inspector General identified billions in questioned costs in the most recent reporting period alone. This is the institutional context inside which Hegseth made his accountability promise. He walked into a department with a decades-long documented inability to account for its own spending, and told Congress he would fix it. What Goodlander exposed yesterday is that the promise was decorative. Because here is the specific mechanism of what happened. Hegseth testified he would be accountable for every dollar. The department then spent $25 billion on an operation that was not budgeted in advance. Hegseth's own comptroller confirmed this was handled as a contingency operation within the existing budget. That means $25 billion moved through the Pentagon's financial system without a dedicated appropriation, without a supplemental budget request to Congress, and without the line item transparency that formal appropriations require. The money was spent. Congress was not given a breakdown. And when a Congresswoman asked for one in an oversight hearing 60 days into the operation, she was told to wait for a product. That is how $25 billion disappears inside a department that has never passed an audit. Now the gas prices. I've thought about that exchange more than anything else in this transcript. because it is so simple and so devastating that I almost missed what it was doing. Goodlander asked Hegseth what gas cost on February 28th. $2.83, the national average before the Iran operation began driving energy prices. She asked what it costs today. $4.23, $1.40 increase per gallon in 60 days. On a commodity that touches every single American, every commute, every delivery, every grocery run, every small business operating on thin margins. Hegseth answered both questions with California. That deflection is not random. California has the highest gas prices in the country due to state-specific environmental regulations and refinery capacity. It is a perennial Republican talking point precisely because it sounds like an answer, while being completely irrelevant to the national picture. Hegseth reached for it twice, which means it was prepared, which means someone on his team knew the national average numbers were coming and decided the California deflection was the play. But here is what that preparation reveals. If your economic team is good enough to prepare a California deflection, they are good enough to calculate the national impact of a $1.40 per gallon increase across the American economy. They know that number. They chose not to say it out loud, because saying it out loud in an oversight hearing means putting it on the record, and putting it on the record means owning it. The crack economic team Hegseth mentioned exists. It did the analysis. The analysis showed what a 60-day military operation does to American energy prices when it runs through one of the world's most strategically sensitive maritime corridors. And the Secretary of Defense sat in that hearing room and answered with California. Here's the thing Goodlander said that I don't think landed hard enough in the clip. She called it an extraordinary dereliction. Not incompetence. Dereliction. That is a specific word with a specific meaning in a military context. It means a willful failure to fulfill a duty you explicitly accepted. Hegseth accepted the accountability duty. He said the words, under oath, multiple times. The dereliction is not that he doesn't know where the money went. It's that he built a public identity around knowing, and then structured his hearing preparation around not having to say. That gap between the promise and the performance is not a communications failure. It is a governance choice. And it is being made inside a department that has failed 8 audits, sits on the GAO high-risk list, and just spent $25 billion on an unbudgeted war without providing Congress a line-item breakdown 60 days in. The accountability he promised and the accountability he delivered are not close to each other. That is my read. Tell me in the comments if you see it differently. Because if there is a version of this where Hegseth's preparation for that hearing was adequate and Goodlander's questions were unfair, I genuinely want to understand the argument. I'm Cole. This is Caught in Committee. He made the promise in that chair. We kept the transcript. If this gave you something nobody else did today, you already know where to find us. We'll be back when the next promise meets the record.